afternoon, and thank you all for hanging in there. Coming now, we are in the home stretch, and we've got a great finish for you. So we hope this day has been a very productive one for you. We hope you've gotten some new connections, had some great stimulating discussions, and are ready to really make great progress on this initiative. It really has been a day and a half, actually, filled with fascinating and innovative, informative discussions, for me at least. And now it is time to introduce our last and certainly not least speaker of this second annual Cyber Education Summit. It's really an honor for me to introduce the Commanding General of the U.S. Army Cyber Center of Excellence in Fort Gordon, located, as you know, and you might have heard throughout the day, right here in Augusta. Major General Stephen Fogarty's long and distinguished military career has taken him around the nation. He does hail from Georgia, actually, so he's come back home. He's been in Kentucky, Kansas, Washington, Hawaii, Arizona, and I'm sure some more, as well as to Afghanistan 3 separate times, where he was a leader of U.S. intelligence efforts. It's not his first time in Augusta either. He served at Fort Gordon for 2 years, back in 2005 to 7, and he commanded the National Security Agency for Georgia there. He returned in September of last year to assume the leadership of the military installation and to continue its mission of becoming a critical hub of our national cyber defense. We've been pleased and fortunate to work with Fort Gordon under his leadership to help Augusta to become a hub of cybersecurity education as well. We look forward to our continued successful collaboration, and I can say it's been a true pleasure to get to know him on a personal level as we've had interactions since I've taken on this particular role in terms of trying to build and extend capacity in cyber education. So without further, please help me welcome Major General Stephen Fogarty.
If you don't mind, I'm going to pace around a little bit as I talk this afternoon. So first of all, thank you, Dr. Kaufman. I want to give a shout out to President Keel, GRU in general. This is, I think, another great example of the capabilities that you've really provided, dedicated yourself to. You've really delivered. And that's why we're very willing to partner with you. I think we had great discussions today in the small group, so we really look forward to continuing all of those efforts. I have to apologize. I did miss yesterday. I was up in Washington D.C. I spoke to a couple of panels at the AUSA conference, and actually flew down last night with General Cardone to participate in today's event. I'm going to talk maybe a little differently about the problem, and to a certain extent it is a problem. There's certainly an opportunity, but there's certainly a lot of challenges that lie ahead of us. But I'm going to try to keep my remarks down to about 20 minutes and then leave some time for some Q&A. When people drive on to Fort Gordon, if you go through Gate 1, once you get through all the traffic that I know extends out to I-20, what you'll see, and you can't blink because it's on the upper right-hand side once you go through security, is that sign. And I start with this slide and this picture because it's really important to understand where we're at in this movie. It's very early, frankly, for us as a Cyber Center of Excellence. When the Department of the Army made the decision to establish a Cyber Center of Excellence down at Fort Gordon back in February of 2014, they frankly underestimated what it was going to take to bring that aspiration into reality. And so what I tell people is we're still the Signal Center of Excellence that's been at Fort Gordon since 1974, and we're transitioning to become the Cyber Center of Excellence. And that's an effort that's going to take probably 3 to 5 years to accomplish. And so we've made a lot of progress, but as General Odierno told us at the last quarterly update we gave before he retired, we have a long ways to go. And General Cardone was in the room when we had that discussion. And he said the same thing about our cybers. You've made a lot of progress, but you still have a long ways to go to provide this operational capability to the nation. So the reason I say that is this is a good opportunity right now as we're building capability, as we're building capacity. This is a great time to partner with us, and we want to partner with you because we have some capability, we have very little capacity. In some cases, we're missing some capabilities. I'm going to talk about that as we work through the presentation this afternoon. But next slide, please. And I am going to use some slides to make some points. I put this slide up for a very important reason. 10 years ago, if you would have asked what was going on at Fort Gordon, the answer would be really not anything that was much different than what was happening at Fort Gordon in 1974. About 70% of the activity was training. Most of that was signal training. And there was the hospital, which does a very important mission. Actually, it's not a hospital, it's an Army Medical Center, and there's a significant difference between the two. And there was this intel thing called NSA Georgia. Actually, it was the Fort Gordon Regional SIGINT Operations Center, or Security Operations Center, and it was called GRSOC. And there was a guy by the name of Hayden, who was a lieutenant general at the time, who was actually the NSA director, and he made a decision that really changed Fort Gordon forever and actually changed the face of the intel business forever. And General Hayden made a decision that he could not do the SIGINT mission with the forces that were available just at Fort Meade. Didn't have the capability or capacity to do everything that he needed. And he had this large workforce that was fairly well trained, but it wasn't very well connected to the SIGINT enterprise, and frankly didn't have the thickening of the civilian NSA workforce that was so important. So he made a huge investment decision. And his decision was to actually build out the enterprise, actually connect the enterprise, make it an enterprise in a way that no director had done previously. So he made the decision to put, at that time, GRSOC, move it into the cryptologic enterprise as a cryptologic center. And the designation was very important because what happened is we became really connected in a way we'd never been connected before. We had the people we really had not had before. And it changed forever the way the U.S. SIGINT system conducts business. And for a long time, cyber was really equivalent to SIGINT. And so NSA led that effort for the nation. So Fort Gordon's been doing cyber for a long time. It will continue to do cyber. Matter of fact, the cyber mission is expanding, but there's a very important intelligence mission that's occurring also on post. And so if you fast forward to today, only about 30% of the activity at Fort Gordon is training. And it's not just signal training, now it's cyber training. About 10% of the activity actually is the hospital, the medical center. About 60% of the activity at Fort Gordon now is 24/7 intelligence, cyber, and signal operations. And so we've become an operational platform not only for the Army, but for the nation. As a matter of fact, we're the most important, most capable power projection platform for the Army, and that power is information, and it's information dominance that is occurring at Fort Gordon today. Now, General Cardone talked about the three pieces of Army cyber, and I just want to refresh you on that very quickly. So I call it the Holy Trinity. And one point of the triangle is Army Cyber. That's the 3-star headquarters that General Cardone commands. And that's the operational force. And then there's something called Army Cyber Institute. That's one of the other points of the triangle, or the Trinity. And that's up at West Point. And that's really, if you think about it, it's our think tank. And their mission is to prevent strategic surprise. They are out with industry and academia really trying to understand where this is all headed, understand where the trends are, trying to keep us from being surprised. And then I'm the third part of the Trinity, the third point of the triangle, and that's the center of excellence. And sometimes we refer to that as the institutional part. So the operations part that General Cardone runs. Army Cyber has a director, Greg Conti, and then I run the institution. And it's really a factory. And in my factory, I stamp out about 12,000 signal soldiers a year. And we've just started stamping out cyber soldiers. So our first class started on 29 July. 30 lieutenants, 15 from West Point from their cyber program, and 15 students from universities all around the nation. We have a PhD from MIT in that class as a second lieutenant. She had options. She did not have to come to Fort Gordon as a second lieutenant and start her career, but she chose to do that. And I think what you're going to find with our workforce, first of all, very highly trained, very highly dedicated. Most of them have options. They have choices. They don't have to do this for us, but they choose to do it for us. And that's really important. And our soldiers would compete well in your classrooms or in your offices. And we see that over and over and over again. And so what we want to have happen is integration, collaboration, dialogue between the private sector, commercial and academic, and the government. And I need your help in figuring out the best way to do that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that as we go on. But what's really important for us is we look at ourselves a little differently. And it's an important difference, though. And this is not just my narrative. This is what our senior leadership understands now. And I don't have artillery out at Fort Gordon. I don't have attack helicopters. You're probably thankful for that. I'm not waking you up at night with gun runs and artillery landing in your backyard, or armored vehicles, or much of that. But what I do have, I have a credible workforce. We're the largest employer in the CSRA. Over 25,000 employees out there. Okay, and they range from very senior NSA civilians, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, contractors of multiple flavors. So it's a very dynamic workforce, again, very highly trained, very dedicated to their mission. And what's also important to understand is a 24/7 operation. So on Thanksgiving Day or Christmas Day or New Year's Eve, there are going to be about 1,000 to 2,000 soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines who aren't just running the physical plant, guarding the gates and things like that. They're actually in contact with the adversary. And sometimes it's an adversary we can see. Sometimes it's an adversary we can hear. Sometimes it's an adversary we can watch working their way through the network. And so that's an important part of the culture there, an operational culture. It's an innovative culture, because if you're out chasing your quarry, you got to be smarter and faster than he is. And it doesn't matter if it's someone that's running down the street with a gun, or someone's on a keyboard clicking his way through the network. So it's really that same persistence the hunting mindset that's required to be successful. And so I'm very proud of our workforce, whether they're civilian or if they're in uniform, regardless of the service, because I've seen firsthand, I've had the pleasure of commanding one of the organizations that is engaged in this struggle every single day. And what's really important is we don't do cyber for cyber's sake. We look at cyber as a form of maneuver that provides our commanders options and provides the enemy with multiple dilemmas. And so cyber is just one aspect of a very holistic targeting effort that we run on Fort Gordon. Next slide, please. So this is what probably most of you guys are interested in, and this is a snapshot of the growth that's occurring out at Fort Gordon over the next few years. And I want you to understand this. Since 2007 till today, DoD's put over $1 billion of capital investment into Fort Gordon. That's facilities, it's IT infrastructure, over $1 billion. That's not payroll. Those are things. It's something concrete, tangible, that you can look at, you can touch. And between now and 22, I estimate we're going to put between $1.5 to $2 billion additional dollars into the infrastructure at Fort Gordon. So there's significant activity that's going on out there. We're not walking away from this. Now, why did General Hayden and then General Alexander decide to make the investment here? Anybody know? Very simple things. Clean, assured power. Georgia Power, one of our most important partners. You probably didn't realize that. Because to run an IT-intensive complex, you have to have power. You have to have clean power. It has to be assured power. You have to have confidence in your partner. That's vitally important. We're adjacent a very high-speed fiber network. Very, very important. As the INSCOM commander, the job I had before I came down here, I had to make a decision where to put a very important national capability. And I selected Fort Gordon because I knew about the comms capability here. I wasn't worried about power. I wasn't worried about the workforce. I wasn't worried about the quality of life for the workforce. And so that, since 2012, that's brought almost 1,500 soldiers, additional soldiers here at Fort Gordon. And that number is growing. We've had a recent series of visitors because the business they're in keeps expanding. So these are conscious decisions that we're making, and it's based on a variety of factors that converge right here in Augusta. And as we look toward this $1.5 to $2 billion additional investment that I think is going to happen, or at least I predict will happen between now and 22, I think there's tremendous opportunity. And I don't even know what all those opportunities are. So we need contact with you. We need contact with our workforce because they have to be confident that this is the place they want to call home. Because they're going to have to make big decisions, life-changing decisions in many cases. They're going to move from Northern Virginia, where many of them have called home for many, many years, to make the move down here. I have experience with this. We hired a large, about 350 NSA civilians when I was the NSA commander down here. That was the first big move down here to transform GRSOC into NSA Georgia. And many will come for the mission, but they're going to stay because of the lifestyle. They have to be able to call Augusta home. And so they're going to look at the same things you look at. Educational opportunities for their children, for their spouses, job opportunities, a quality of life that's second to none. And what's really important to understand is all these people have options. And they're going to vote. They get to vote. There'll be some very junior service members who will end up here, but we want them to stay here. And so the quality of life is very, very important to us. But this is what it looks like. Now, clearly all this is subject to change, but this is what the current plan is. And these are the clearest numbers that I can provide. Next slide. So this is the breakdown. What's really important is to understand 30% intelligence. About 30% will actually work for me in the Cyber Center of Excellence. And that includes the students who are here generally for anywhere from a couple of months to almost a year for their training. You can see the medical, again, Eisenhower, tremendous capability for the nation, for the Army, and for the local community. And you look at that cyber, those are all large numbers. They're all tangible numbers. And that's kind of the breakdown. So it kind of shows this idea that we've gone from training to an operational activity out here. Next slide. So we're under a cyber attack, apparently. So this is kind of our path to war. Up at the top is the task that the Secretary of the Army and the Chief of Staff of the Army gave my predecessor, and he worked hard, and I'm working hard now to actually deliver that. And it's pretty straightforward, right? It's take what was the Signal Center of Excellence, really the history of Fort Gordon, and actually change that, fundamentally change that organization and that workforce into the Cyber Center of Excellence. And we've made a lot of progress. So Jen Buckner, why don't you raise your hand? I think many of you have met Jen. She's a cyber commandant. And she had the task of really moving down here. I remember talking to her. She was a brigade commander for me. She was actually the first CSL Select Cyber Operations Brigade commanders in the Army. And she did a phenomenal job up at Fort Meade for 2 years, built that organization to what it is today. And then for her reward, she got to come down and take on an even tougher task, which is to work through the bureaucracy to actually stand up an entire college, which we call the cyber school. And she's responsible not only for the cyber force, but also the electronic warfare course or school, which is out at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. So she has very, very significant responsibilities, and it has been a tough road. But there have been some really important things. General Cardone talked about standing up the cyber branch. That's critically important. First branch, the Army stood up since 1985. It was recognition that we could not continue to bleed the manpower that we were making such a big investment in. Some of our high-end operators, it takes 18 months of training just to get to the apprentice level. 18 months to get to the apprentice level, to show up and have a lot of supervision. So we can't, on a 6-year enlistment, I can't throw that force away. Now, General Cardone made a really good point today. We don't retain, first of all, it's unrealistic to retain that entire force. But we think about 30% is probably about the right number. And we know we're going to have to work hard to do that. Because I'm competing with you. I'm competing with you in the classroom. I'm competing with you in the private commercial sector. I'm competing with the other services who are shameless about poaching, just like we are. I'm competing with the intelligence community, with the FBI, with anybody. So this is a tough environment, not to recruit, not to train, but to hold on to the best and the brightest. And I'm okay with the guys who decide we're going to move into NSA or the FBI or someplace like that. I'm okay with the ones that move into industry, actually. It just has to be moderated. There has to be some balance. And that's really important because you depend upon their capabilities behind the keyboard for the security of the nation. So there has to be some way of keeping these guys in. And what we realized is we were killing ourselves. we were moving them kind of on the standard rotation. We would highly train them, maybe get a year and a half out of them on a really important mission, and we'd move them out to some place where they spent most of the day in the motor pool, maybe. And what do you think they did? They left. They voted with their feet. And so we recognize that. The other thing we recognize, besides just the retention and, frankly, building cohesion, was to have a real operational capability, we had to have stability. Now, the Navy did it well before anyone else did, and I have to give them kudos. They did it with their cryptologic force, who really are the backbone of their cyber force, and they got this a long time ago. And if you're a sailor who's assigned to Nyack, Georgia, at Fort Gordon, you literally could have an entire career here. The only time you would be away is when you were deployed or if you were at school someplace. But you could literally spend an entire career here if you wanted to. And so that gives tremendous stability to your families, gives tremendous operational continuity. So it's a really important big idea. So the Army was late to it, but we're working hard to catch up to their example. But as you can see, these dates are really important because they become a forcing function, but our ability to achieve full operational capability is based on a set of conditions that will take us well past November of this year. We're not even close. Like I said, we're probably 3 to 5 years out from really, truly being a fully operational capability. And part of it has to do with facilities. And if you think about any school, you need students. And as General Cardone said, we're getting the students, and we're getting quality students. I need instructors, and that's a challenge for us right now. What I'm training is going straight into the operations, as you can imagine. I mean, desperately filling holes in operational units. And so my ability to thin those ranks to instruct is a challenge. And so we have some military instructors, but we also have contract instructors. We think this is a great space for academic partners to enter, as well as our commercial partners. And I think, frankly, it's healthy to have a balance of that capability anyway. Even if I could do it all myself, I don't think that's the right answer. So I think there's going to be tremendous opportunities in that space. So I've got students, working instructors. Curriculum is very important to me. We train to a joint standard. The level of certification required to get on the network and operate is frankly astounding. But I think what's really important to understand is we want our young uniformed civilians that are operating this space, we want them to operate ethically. We want them to operate within the law of the land. And so it takes a significant amount of training in order to do that. So I'm not going to get away from that. There are some certain skill sets, whether it's big data analytics, certain internet protocols, certain software capabilities that, frankly, we think having partners with the commercial side and with academia, it really makes a lot of sense to develop that curriculum. Because, frankly, you're using that very, very quickly. And instead of us having to take something that you've already developed, do it ourselves, we're perfectly happy to buy that capability from you. And the last thing I need are facilities. And for those of you who have been out to Fort Gordon, if you look out to the NSA site, you can see what $1 billion gets you. If you look at my side of the post, my side of the tracks, you see what about 40 years of benign neglect gets you. And my job as a factory, I've got to bring the students in, and right now I would be challenged in the current facilities to bring in students from any legitimate university, from a high school, and say, look, this is what you're signed up for, or you're signing up for. If I could get them to the operational site, which unfortunately I can't do, we would have to beat people away from the doors because what they would see would just amaze them. But I've got to get them in through the training base first, have to get them appropriately cleared. And so we're working that really hard to fix that deficiency. Next slide. And I'm not going to talk this because I think this audience probably understands everything on that slide. Next slide. So these are my priorities. This is what we're really working hard to build. And you can see it stretches from acquisition to facilities, to the workforce, to curriculum, to establishing, frankly, we call it coherent community of interest. And you're all part of that. And we just have to figure out a way to make that a reality. Next slide. And this will be my last slide, I think. Yep. So we're embarking on a very aggressive program to get us to where we need to be on the facility side. We've briefed this up to the senior levels of the Army. We have a good idea of where we're going. We think we have a pretty good idea of when we're going to be able to start. And what we're doing right now is we're identifying funding sources to make this effort a reality. But what we've recognized is for us, the network is our weapons platform, and we have to organize around the weapons platform. Again, I don't have artillery. I don't have attack helicopters. I don't have armored vehicles, but I have a network. And I have to be able to organize around that. And I have to have the most modern network possible in order to be able to maneuver my force, my capabilities, in the way I need to. So that's what we're working toward. And I think if we jump to the last slide, which is really where we need, where you can help or where we need your help. Keep going. So we'll wait for that to come up. But keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Right there. So those are some things we need. We need your help on. And so I don't expect you to give me the answers today. I know you'll have questions for me, so I'll be answering your questions. But what I would ask you to do is think about that. Think about the challenge, the problem statement we have. And given the context that I provided, how you can plug into us and how you can help and how we can make it a win-win for a partnership between industry, academia, and the government. So that's what I would ask you to help us with. And then let's move to the next slide, which is actually the question and answer. Okay, so do we have time for questions, or is there any interest? Anyone have any questions? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, actually, we have not. That's a great idea. So we got people that are writing that one down right now. I think that's actually a really good idea. Yeah, one of the things is we work with one of our foreign partners, as they described, that they go down to the middle school, because if they wait till high school or they wait till they get to the university, everybody else has been there first. And so that's a really good idea. So we need to take a really hard look at that. So thanks for offering that. And for those who would think that's a no-brainer, actually that's why we do these things, is we get some good help. So thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yes, there is. It's generally in conjunction with partners. So it's us really establishing what the requirements are. There's very little native development that occurs. It's one of the things that General Cardone is actually most concerned about, particularly for the tools, both offensive and defensive tools. And part of it is really we're still trying to identify how we're going to acquire that force. How much will be really capabilities will contract out, how much of it will be done by civilians, which are actually much harder to keep in this environment right now than the military, and then will we do a kind of a traditional military way of acquisition, which is we'll bring in some enlisted soldiers, send them through basically 3 or 4 years of education, or we're going to start bringing some of our officers in. And for the Army, we generally put our officers in leadership positions. They do very little of the technical things. And what we've come to recognize is that we're wasting a lot of capability that's coming really right out of university, and they're very eager to get on the keyboard. Most of them don't want to be in the management position. They want to be doing. And so that's where we're at right now, is trying to figure out what that balance is. I think we're going to get to the point where we're going to start to increase the demand from the universities. We're going to bring officers in who will actually do coding. They will do a lot of some of the keyboard type of things. And we know that for many of those, they'll move and they'll go into the private sector from there. That's actually okay with us. But very, very good question. I think as we start to develop more capacity, then we'll start to do more of that ourselves.
Follow up on that. Do you have a problem that you need agency style where due to sheer demographics, baby boomers retiring and so on, 30% of the federal workforce is retiring? Is that you have a younger workforce that we have?
We actually have a much younger workforce. The question was about basically the bubble, the employment bubble. I think ours is flatter than some other. Frankly, this is. We've been doing this for a while, but in comparison to kind of traditional intelligence fields, who are really experiencing that right now. And when I was the J2 down at CENTCOM, we hired about 1,200 civilians when I was down at Tampa. One of the things that we really had to look at was flattening that bubble, and so we had traditionally hired a lot of military who were retiring or who were leaving the service, and they had a tendency to be relatively older. And as we sat down, we mapped all this out. We recognized we were really creating a problem for ourselves. So we went out. We recruited from other agencies, frankly, analysts who were pretty young. They wanted a voice in some of the larger organizations. It's really hard to get a voice when you're a junior employee. So we were able to bring them in. The other thing we did was we went out and we looked at universities. Now, we learned a lot when we did that because as I looked at the recruiting team, the first guys that went out, they were a bunch of old guys like me. And all the recruiting material, there were pictures of like old guys like me. And I said, yeah, you're not going to recruit the people we want if you look like me. And so we actually changed our recruiting strategy. Actually, we had to pretty quickly, and that actually started to work for us. So it's understanding who you want, and that's job number one. And then you have to make sure they can see themselves in your organization. And if your organization are a bunch of dudes like me, it's really hard for a young person to actually see that. So we want our young soldiers who are very enthusiastic to get out there and talk to them and share what the opportunities are with them. We're not as sophisticated as we need to be, and that's something, given the competition, we really have to up our game on. So we're not complacent about recruiting. General Cardone said, hey, we've met our objectives. We're not complacent about that. We can't afford to be because one of the other things, we have a pretty high attrition rate going through the training. And then, obviously, the retention, I think that's just always going to be a challenge. Not just retaining the numbers, but retaining the quality that we need. Yes, sir.
General, I absolutely agree that training has to come before you let people get onto the operational networks. But the education training has to be with realistic learning environments. And are you building those here for the education training purpose, or can educational or universities probably have some approximations of those to really expose them to the kind of system they're going to run into?
Yeah, so that's a great point. So if you look at the design principles we laid out, so first of all, today we're not organized around a network. I have fiber between buildings, and my fiber goes to copper in the buildings. And I run Cat 4 and Cat 5 cable in my buildings, which is astounding. And so what we've recognized is we have a problem right now with our technology. We're sending some soldiers to the operational force without having seen the threat or used the tools that they're going to use. The operational force has to make up that training. And part of it is because I don't have the TS level space that I need. Part of it is I don't have the modern network that I need. Part of it is I don't have all the tools that I need. So that's what we're working on. Now, that doesn't mean they don't exist in the Army. They don't exist at NSA. So what I want to assure everyone, particularly anyone who's getting ready to put the Twitter feed out, is that exists, and we don't allow the force to get on the net without being fully certified and fully trained. We think we can do it here much more efficiently than the other models. And so the Army so first of all, the big decision was to build it here. Second was to make the assessment, which we've done over the last 9 months. We've offered a solution to the Army. I think they recognize they have to do it. The question right now is, how do you fund it? Not if you will fund it, but how they will do that. So right now, we're in a transition stage. And this is where there's a lot of opportunity, because I have to provide that persistent training environment to my workforce. And so I borrow it really right now from NSA, from some of the intel organizations that are on post. So I do it, I just don't do it in the most efficient way possible. So I think there are some opportunities for both industry and academia to fill that near-term gap. And I say near-term, kind of 3 to 5 year gap before we're fully operational. I think it's really important to understand that we will shrink that gap over a period of time. So that's not a permanent requirement, but in the short term, it's a very important requirement to be met. So I think both academia and industry, there are opportunities to help us out in that area. We do need some of the instruction, frankly, has to be done at the classified level. Some universities are very capable of doing that. Again, I think there are some great opportunities to partner with you in those specific areas. Sure.
Sir, are there any opportunities for reserve component soldiers to actually do cyber?
Yeah, there's actually quite a bit of opportunity. Both the Army Reserve and the National Guard have decided they're going to establish. I think it's a total of 20 CPTs. Is that right, Jen? 20 between the two.
21, sir. 10 in
Yeah.
the Guard, and 11 in the Guard, and 10 in the Reserve.
Okay, so 21 CPTs. And remember, all of our organizations are combined arms. So there's cyber, there's signal, there's intel. In some case, some planners in all of them. So they're moving out on that task actually pretty rapidly. We've partnered with the National Guard and NSA to do the curriculum development for us. They're basically, the Guard's taken the curriculum that NSA has, they're moving that really kind of into the Army learning model. And so there's a lot of opportunities, bottom line.
Thank you, Major. I'm just curious. I'm a young person, and I'm sort of trying to pursue this cyber security sort of field. There are a lot of young people who might be turned off by working for the government since the OPM hacks sort of happened, and that sort of makes government jobs a little bit more risky. How would you say make your area sort of more attractive to young people, and sort of compete with the private sector jobs?
So that's a really good point. So what I need you to do is I need you to help me defend against the OPM hack. So we have a huge challenge. We're under persistent attack. So I've got lots of mission. And I think it's very, very important mission. And I'm going to give you authorities to operate for the government that you're not going to have anyplace else. I'm going to give you frankly, opportunities to contribute to the nation that you're not going to have anyplace else. So what we're looking for are people who want to take up that challenge to work the toughest targets, make the most impact. Now, you're not going to get a lot of glory for it because most of what you do you're not going to be able to talk about, but that's okay. And I think that you've got to help us. So first of all, we're going to talk to you after this. We're going to talk to you about what you think, what would be attractive to you, what would entice you. What do you think your friends, how they would be enticed to give it a hard look, maybe give it a try. So I don't know if that's an internship with us, an internship with the National Security Agency, with the Defense Intelligence Agency, but just to get an understanding of the scope of the mission, frankly, the responsibilities you're going to have at a generally very junior age. Well, I was the ISAF J2 and the CENTCOM J2. I had very junior analysts who were briefing General Petraeus, they're briefing General Allen, General Scaparrotti, General Milley on what's happening in their particular discipline or their particular area. And then having the opportunity to actually listen to those senior leaders, almost repeat verbatim what they were told by that analyst, potentially to the president, to the national security staff, to a president in Iraq or Afghanistan. And there are very few people who have the ability to do that. And I'm not downplaying how important the commercial sector is to us. I mean, we run off the commercial sector as a nation. I mean, that's vitally important. But this is just a little different. And one of the things I've done recently is people have asked me about opportunities on the civilian side. I say, hey, there are tremendous opportunities. But I also pull I think it's a New York Times article, I can't remember if it's the Times or the Washington Post, kind of expose on Amazon, working conditions there. So not every company is like that. But look very carefully because the grass is always greener. But we want to talk to you. So if you can stand by, I know Colonel Buckner is going to hook up with you at the end of this session. Yes, ma'am.
What would be the potential for high school ROTC students to get into an internship or apprenticeship?
So we haven't done that yet, but NSA does that. And so I think there's good opportunity to do that. We do with college students. NSA does it with high school students. So I think there's an opportunity there also.
Sure. I do a lot of stuff with juvenile delinquency, but have you looked at reaching out to programs like the National Guard Team Challenge for developing cyber initiatives?
Yeah, we have not done that yet. So again, we're going to talk to you about a couple of your ideas, and I think that you can certainly bring that to the table. Okay, anything else? I'm not trying to hold you hostage here.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Kaufman, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to speak this afternoon.
I appreciate so much you're doing that. Let's join in thanking you. Once again, thank you so much. We appreciate it. So now we are at the end of this program. Once again, I appreciate everyone being here. There were so many powerful messages, so many recurring themes around partnership, around the power of doing this collaboratively across all our sectors. One of the things that really resonated so powerfully with me this morning from Director O'Sullivan was the Fortran team and the descriptors that she used about them, which was that there was diversity, there was fearlessness, and there was, what was the last one? A bit of genius. I would say that we have all of that and more amongst us all, and together I think we can make wonderful, wonderful progress. We appreciate you being here. Mark your calendars for some date in about this vicinity next year for our 3rd annual, and it will be Augusta University at that point, Cyber Summit. We appreciate everyone being here, all our speakers, all the great organizers. Monty, I can't thank you enough. Tony, what a great job you did moderating throughout the day. So many people participated, and that includes every one of you. Thank you for your participation. So whether you are going down the street, across the state, or across the nation, safe travels and Godspeed. Thank you.